Well, hey folks, Real Honesty with John Rickland. These are my 12 favorite wrestling managers ever. And yeah, there are going to be some, obviously, that are left off the list. My list is going to be different from you guys, but the art of the wrestling manager really has been lost. Now, there are a couple recent ones that have done pretty well. Paul Ellering managing AOP. He may appear on this list. Zelina Vega with Andrade Cien Almas. She's not going to appear here. If this was, recorded in 2020, and I could always do a Redux or something in a couple years, or talk about, best wrestling managers of the last 10 years, Zelina would be on there. Zelina is a really good spokesperson for Andrade Cien Almas, but she's not there yet. She's not there yet to be on this list, but that doesn't take away from any of the work that she's done so far, which has been great. So, do want to take a moment to thank everybody that has supported my channel so far. Very close to 100,000 views. Really appreciate it. Thank you guys very much. Hopefully I can hit that 100,000 view goal by the end of the month. We'll see. Recording is just before work, so let's get cracking on. Number 12, Harley Race. Mainly his time managing Vader is why he's on here, because he lent a lot of credibility to Vader. He really made Vader seem legit, like a legit badass. Not that Vader already wasn't, but he gave him more credibility, being a 7-time, actually 8-time unrecognized world heavyweight champion. And just, with his gruff voice and his demeanor and the way he was willing to still take some bumps, even though he was really hurt at that point. He was also old, and he had been retired since like just about 1990. I think he beat Tommy Rich at Great American Bash 1990, and that was one of the last matches he had. Harley Race transitioning to a wrestling manager role really helped Vader, and honestly, one of the best things that Harley Race did in his career, at least in the last few years of his career. Really helped a lot, and one of the legit toughest guys, being with one of the biggest, if not the best monster heels and super heavyweight monster heel ever. Really, how can you beat that combination? Number 11, Captain Lou Albano. Captain Lou Albano, where he was a heel or a babyface, the guy was great. The guy honestly was great. He was great. He was energetic. I don't know if he was coked out of his damn mind or if he was just wild and crazy. But whether he was managing the Wild Samoans as a heel in like the 80s, the early 80s, or whether he was managing the Head Shrinkers as a babyface in the, early to mid 90s, it really, really helped. He was always energetic, great stuff. And without Captain Lou, we wouldn't have had the whole damn Cyndi Lauper thing. He was a big catalyst for that. So, yeah, okay, that may not have as much to do with his managerial career, but because he was such a great manager and a great talker, it really helped. And it was really, really nice that he was able to do that, and just some great work that Captain Lou always did. Just, Captain Lou was great. He was just fantastic. Number 10, Gary Hart. Gary Hart, the reason he's ranked a little lower here than some might expect is because I've seen enough of his work. I appreciated what he did. I thought he was a great manager for Muda. He was a great manager in World Class for various people. I believe including Gino Hernandez and Chris Adams. I believe he managed both of them, if I remember right. He managed some various people, and Skandar Akbar deserves an honorable mention, even though I wasn't able to see enough of his stuff. He was pretty good also, but he gets an honorable mention because, like I said, I hadn't seen enough of his work. But Gary Hart really was great. He's a great talker, very eloquent, very well spoken, and great heel. Really was able to get under your skin by being just a big old dick, and it was fantastic because Gary Hart was great at doing that. So he deserves a mention on this list. Number 9, and this is where I'm stretching the whole thing of manager maybe like a little bit thin, because some people might think that, manager's supposed to talk and this kind of stuff, but I'm putting Miss Elizabeth at number 9. You might say she's more of a valet and everything since she didn't really do much, but she broke the mold for what a lot of women did as far as like in WWE. Now there's also Precious and Sunshine and a few other women that did a lot of great things in the NWA, and, in NWA, Jim Crockett Promotions, and World Class Championship Wrestling, but Miss Elizabeth really broke the mold in WWE. She really did. There were some other good women that they had for a number of years before Miss Elizabeth, and Miss Elizabeth never had to get in the ring. Well, at least in WWE. WCW, they put her in the ring. That wasn't the best idea. But she always exuded class. She always obviously exuded beauty. I believe she was the first wrestling crush that I ever had. How could you not? Miss Elizabeth was just overall fantastic, just great, and she really was. And managing Randy Savage, she did manage Lex Luger later in her career, which wasn't the best part, and I've I'm not going to rant about that here because I already said my piece on Lex Luger, the murdering scum that he is. But anyway, that's okay. It's not okay. It's actually terrible, and I hope that Lex Luger pays dearly for what he did, like karma-wise. But Miss Elizabeth, when she was managing Randy Savage, that was a match made in heaven. It was an absolute match made in heaven. I'm saddened by the fact that she passed away. Whole nother topic for another day, but her as Randy Savage's manager. I mean, obviously also his wife at the time. She was just great, and she deserves a place on this list for just how good she was, how honest to God great she was, and how she did break the mold for a lot of women. At least as far as how women were perceived. In outside ring roles, because obviously there were some very legit tough women that were wrestling in WWE even at that time. Number 8, James J. Dillon. He managed 4 Horsemen. I mean, he managed other people too before he got into Jim Crockett Promotions and and he even wrestled out of Florida. But his time managing the 4 Horsemen is why he's here. I mean, the best faction in wrestling history. Fight me if you want. He's the best in wrestling history. Period. End of story. I don't even want to hear I mean, you guys can argue in the comments if you want. I'm not gonna say if you guys say the NWO, that's fine. If you guys want to say DX, no, please. But whatever, you guys can have fun and have a fun debate about that. But no, James J. Dillon being here for managing the 4 Horsemen, that's why. Because without J.J. Dillon, the 4 Horsemen may have not been as great as they were, because he was like, as great as the talent was. I mean, you had Ole Anderson there, who was near the end of his career. You had Arn Anderson, who was a great worker. Tully Blanchard, who was a great worker and a great talker. So was Arn. And Flair, who was one of the best talkers and one of the best workers. He, James J. Dillon was able to be the calming effect, but also be a way to, negotiate the way where, oh, hey, my guys won't defend their titles unless this happens, this kind of stuff. And he was really that snide guy where you just wanted to see him get his ass kicked, and then he got his shoulder busted in that War Games match, and oh dear God, poor Dillon, just landed right on his shoulder. It's one of the most brutal things I've seen. But J.J. Dillon's just great. Just great. I'm really happily putting him on this list. I know it's just a fans list, but still, he was great at what he did. Number 7, Paul Ellering. He managed Legion of Doom, which right there for how many, the Road Warriors, Legion of Doom, for how long he managed them, especially in NWA, AWA, WCW, and then even for a brief time in WWE. I'm going to ignore his time managing DOA because that was shit, and he made AOP interesting. Without Ellering, AOP would not nearly be the stars that they are, because Ellering helped them. Ellering gave them credibility. That's really right what it was. He's a genius. He is great at what he does. He was willing to take a fucking super kick in a match, and he's a little bit old to do that, but good for him. Ellering, one of the best managers, period. I mean, he just is. He just, honest to God, is. Number 6, and this one may surprise people, Vicky Guerrero. Because Vicky Guerrero, and somebody said in the comments, forgive me if I don't remember right away who it is. My mind's a little bit, flunky. A little bit out there. But I remember somebody saying that Vicky Guerrero single-handedly revived the wrestling manager role like in the modern age. And they're right. Her being a manager, especially getting in the business that essentially killed her husband, and that's not being mean, that's essentially what happened. Vicky Guerrero was just fantastic. She was great as a heel. Just, excuse me. I mean, I'm not going to attempt to do that, but it's like I popped so much. And by the way, check out the end of year review, or not end of year, but the 6-month in review that the Derb and myself did for WWE and NXT, where we actually briefly talked about that. That was such a great pop when she came back at the Women's Royal Rumble. Just like, like I believe it was number 16 or number 17. I think it was 16. But she just... like, you know what, 3, 2, 1, and then just, excuse me, the crowd pops, I pop up, just like, oh, that's great, Vicky was great at getting under people's skin. I hated her on TV, but I respected her for what she did, and she was damn good at what she did. She didn't care if she had to humiliate herself to get people over, or to get, other talents over. She could get herself over, she could get the guys she was managing over. Dolph Ziggler benefited, Edge benefited. Big Show was also there. I mean, I'm sure Eric Escobar. I almost said Pablo Escobar. Eric Escobar, less so. That's less on Vicky and more on the fact that Escobar was kept in developmental forever and must have had an ego or something about himself, or they just brought him up just to job him out. I don't know what the hell the deal was, but Vicky would always allow herself to be humiliated, but also was just great. She was just fucking fantastic at what she did. She really was. Number 5, Paul Heyman. Now, people may be surprised he's ranked at number 5. I have a reason for why I have the top 4 there. Heyman's later career outside of managing Brock Lesnar hasn't been that great. I'm sorry, his managing Curtis Axel and Ryback and Cesaro was not all that good. That's not so much on Heyman, that's also on creative. He had some great promos when he was feuding with CM Punk or when he was managing CM Punk. That stuff was great. And him managing Brock Lesnar was also great, but managing the original Midnight Express, nephew with Jim Cornette that went nowhere where it should have gone somewhere. Being Paulie Dangerously, managing Samoan SWAT team, managing various people in ECW. Managing the Dangerous Alliance. The Dangerous Alliance is one of the forgotten factions because it didn't really last that long, even though it should have, in a great War Games match at Wrestle War 92. Ellering is great as a Paul. It's like one of the great Paul managers. Heyman, though. And yeah, I botched there, by the way. But Heyman, the best, Paul manager that there is, period. And I also want to throw in another Paul here where I'm actually going to throw in Paul Bearer. And yeah, it's my list, so I'm ballooning it up to 13. And here's why. Because Bearer, so Heyman managing all those people is great. He could always talk people into a building and hype up everything as best he can. Bearer managing Undertaker, he managed Vader, he managed Mankind, managed Kane. And Paul Bearer, and he'd had times of world-class championship wrestling. Also, he was great. Paul Bearer was tremendous, and it's so sad that he died when he did. That he died before he could get into the Hall of Fame. I think they were going to induct him anyway before he unfortunately passed away. And I didn't really like how his death was used at an angle, but Paul Bearer was tremendous. Paul Bearer is one of the true greats in wrestling manager history. So yeah, I was going to go to a top 13. I've decided this mid-show. Why the hell not? I'm going to do a top 13. So yeah, what the hell? Anyway, I had to slot both of them in, and actually they're almost 1 and 1, like 5A and 5B, because they both impacted the wrestling business so tremendously. Number 4, and this may surprise some people, Sherry Martel. She managed Macho Man Randy Savage, Shawn Michaels. She briefly managed Tatanka. That didn't really last too long. Her time with Harlem Heat was absolutely amazing. She had this brief stint in ECW also. I believe she managed Shane Douglas, or was around Shane Douglas. But her time with Harlem Heat is something obviously Scary Sherry, Queen Sherry, that kind of stuff. Managing Randy Savage was fantastic. She really lent a lot of credibility to Shawn Michaels' character. And then you had that whole thing happen where she was managing Tatanka and that didn't really go anywhere. It was odd, but it was just a way for her to feud with Luna. And sorry, Luna's not on here. Nothing against Luna at all. And Sherry Martel deserves to be on this list. The reason she deserves to be on this list, seriously, she was great. She's probably the greatest female wrestling manager there ever was. And is unsung and underappreciated. And really should be seen as one of the best ever. Now, fortunately, she got inducted in the Hall of Fame before she passed away. I would have been really pissed if she hadn't gotten in. But her time, especially her time with Harlem Heat, the way she helped present them as such a credible threat, even though they were great athletes, she lent credibility with her great work as a wrestler and as a manager and as a talker. And also Harlem Heat protected Sherry whenever they went to the ring or whatever. They would always kind of surround her and this kind of stuff. Like if fans tried to get at Sherry or whatever, who the hell's going to try to go through those two guys to get to Sherry? Not that Sherry couldn't have taken care of herself. She could have waffled somebody with a freaking, fist or a forearm. But yeah, Sherry's time as a manager was just fantastic. Number 3, Jimmy Hart. I don't really need to recount Jimmy Hart's career, but his time, just briefly, his time in Memphis, his time in WWE, his time in WCW, Jimmy Hart, the Mouth of the South, the Megaphone, managing Hogan, managing against Hogan, managing Money Inc., managing, the Hart family when he managed the Hart Foundation and went against them. His time in Memphis was also great. What little bit I've been able to see. Jimmy Hart is one of the best wrestling managers ever. Period. End of story. There's really nothing more I can say about Jimmy Hart other than just how great he fucking is. Because he understood what it was to, take the bumps and everything, be that sniveling heel that you just wanted to beat up, but also somebody that you could, appreciate because he was entertaining because of his antics and everything. So he really was that great. So just Jimmy Hart, not the best Jim on this list. Number 2, Jim Cornette. I could sit here for about 20 minutes and talk about Jim Cornette if I really, really wanted to, but, well, A, I have to go to work. B, also, what else is there to say about Jim Cornette? Managing variations of the Midnight Express. Managing various people in Smoky Mountain Wrestling. What little bit I've seen in Smoky Mountain Wrestling I was impressed with, and Jim Cornette was a great focal point. That makes sense considering he was running the territory. Managing Vader, managing Owen, managing Davey. His time when he was an authority figure in TNA, when he managed people, I believe, in Ring of Honor. His time as a manager is just one of the greatest managers ever. He really was so good at, taking the bumps, getting heat, helping his guys out, but also allowing himself to be made fun of. He's like putting a straitjacket and put up in a cage or putting a sling when he worked in Mid-South, when he worked in Memphis, when he worked in World Class. And then Jim Crockett Promotions and all the way through. Recounting Jim Cornette's career would take too long, but the man was just great at what he fucking did. Just fucking great at what he did. He was the second greatest manager because the greatest manager ever is Bobby Heenan, and that's pretty much where I just need to leave the list off because Bobby Heenan. Bobby Heenan's the greatest wrestling manager ever. He could always get people over. He could always talk people in the building. The Weasel suit, the Weasel chants, the way he would react, he was so over that if he just turned after one Weasel chant, the place erupted. The place went absolutely insane. And that's really all you need to say about Bobby Heenan. I mean, it's like recounting his career would take about 30 minutes. The man was just great from the AWA to, even from earlier than that, managing Bockwinkel and Stevens, the Heenan family, where he managed Hercules, managed against Hercules, managed Andre. He was a big part of why Andre and Hogan got over, because Heenan being there meant that Andre is going to go bad. There was just so much good stuff with Bobby Heenan's career. His time on color commentary is a whole nother discussion. But his time as a manager, he was so fucking good that there was no way you could really say anything bad about Bobby Heenan's career. So that's just what I gotta say there. Those are my now 13 favorite wrestling managers because I decided to slot Paul Bearer in there. Yes, I forgot to put him on there, and I feel bad, but I'm putting Paul Bearer on there. So yeah, top 13 favorite wrestling managers. Do you agree? Do you disagree with what I said? Who are some that you would put on your list? You can leave them in the comments. You can find me on Twitter. Twitter links in the description. Like, share, subscribe. Also, it's been Real Honesty with John Rickland, and I will see you soon.